Okay, so today I'm going to say a few things about the test, and then we will talk about chapter 3, the beginning of chapter 3. I will go over the test on Friday, because not everyone's taken it yet. From my perspective, the test went the way it usually goes. Had some A's, including some high A's, had a mix of other grades, and I had some people that were very clearly underperformed their expectations. Frankly, that's normal. It's kind of what I've been trying to warn you about since day one, that this class can be hard in ways that are not expected. If you did not like your grade, I encourage you to sign up with the Center for Student Success and get some student tutoring. I encourage you to keep in mind that you only get 4 sessions of student tutoring, and I'd encourage you not to focus on exam 2, because exam 2, frankly, is easier than the other exams because it tests less of a STEM math type skill and more of a humanities type skill, more of an interpretive type skill. So we're going to start going over those sorts of things today. I encourage you to work on the Logic Cola, and I will offer everyone this lifeline. Now I want you to understand exactly what I'm offering here. If on the final exam, your earned grade, uncurved on the final exam, is greater than the grade that you earned for exam 1, I will replace your grade on exam 1 with your grade for the final exam. So that means if you did very badly on exam 1, that might not matter, as long as you can do better on the final. That being said, the final is hard. And if you did not do well on exam 1, the skills that we will test for exams 3 and 4 are largely like the skills for exam 1. And I've seen 10 years of student correlations, and the scores on exam 3 and 4 correlate closely with exam 1. So, so I will offer you, if improvement is shown by a higher grade on the final exam, I will replace your grade on exam 1 with that. But I don't want you to be lulled into a false sense of, oh, that would be easy. That's like, so this is like your math teacher saying, well, you did badly on exam 1 of Calc 3. If you do better on the Calc 3 final, I'll give you that grade for your exam 1 as well. So let's say, I want to give you some time to adjust. I know people are always caught off guard by how difficult exam one actually is, but yeah. So I want to send you a lifeline, but I don't want you to be deceived. That's hardly a sure thing. Doing better on the final is hardly a sure thing. All right. So we will go over the exam question by question on Friday. All right, so this is session number for the app. This is session number 082376. For those of you playing along at home, the session number is 082376. All right, so let's talk today about an important topic that sounds easy, and in some ways is both easier and harder than it sounds. We are going to talk about sort of the tones of words. To make a long story short, to oversimplify something, you can have multiple different terms to describe the same event or thing. And the terms that you use bias the conversation, or can bias the conversation, by either being overly positive, overly negative, or neutral. The goal in logic and in any sort of mature discourse is to find terms that are neutral. We can say it this way. Here's an example. I am firm, you are obstinate, and he is pig-headed. Now, these three terms all refer to the same trait. When I have a trait, firm, being stubborn or steadfast, I think it's a good thing. So I will use a positive term. I will call it firmness. If I am less positive on you, I'll call you obstinate, which is more negative. And if I really don't like someone, I'll call them pig-headed for being stubborn. But it's all the same trait. So the goal is to use terminology that is as neutral as possible. And this actually has very important implications. If you do not use neutral terms, you will inadvertently reveal what your opinions are on things. And this can cause people either to like you or dislike you, to trust you or distrust you. And this can have very real life consequences. So I've watched this over the past 4.5 years. It was very clear to anyone who knows how language works that most media outlets did not like Donald Trump. Now, we'll bracket the question whether or not they should have liked Donald Trump, but they consistently did not use neutral terms. They consistently used unnecessarily negative terms. And the effect was this. People who were either on the fence about Trump or were pro-Trump simply stopped trusting the news altogether. And this was really bad, because when the news wanted to say something actually truly bad about them, people had already stopped listening. So let me give you an example. My favorite example of this. 4 years ago, we had the Donald Trump inauguration. And every inauguration has an inauguration cake. A big, super fancy, multi-tiered cake, really cool. And every time there's an inauguration, the news always reports this sort of fluff article about, oh, how beautiful the cake is, or how cool it was, or it's chocolate and vanilla. You know, I mean, it's not a substantially political piece. Several political outlets for the Trump inauguration cake reported it this way. Did Donald Trump plagiarize his inauguration cake? And by the way, if you doubt me, Google this. This was on CNN and several other major outlets. So if people who already didn't like Trump said, yeah, that bastard, he plagiarized his cake too. He's so evil. He didn't make his cake. He's the president. So this was, so everyone who was neutral or pro-Trump said, see, we can't trust a damn thing CNN says about Trump. They hate his guts so incredibly much, they can't even say something nice about his cake. And that's one of the reasons why people distrust the news. It's extraordinarily important to use neutral terms if you want people to trust you. Yeah, I mean, maybe there are cases where something truly bad has happened, but you can't waste your negative terms on something like somebody's cake if you want somebody to trust you. Anyway, none of that is about whether or not I like Trump, by the way. All that is about the fact that I dislike the media, and I blame them for a ton of problems in our culture because the media acts in a way that causes people not to trust them. Okay, so let's give some examples. A cop. The best way, so here's what's difficult about this section. Some of you, especially those of you who did not like your grade, will get super nervous on this section because there aren't always ironclad rules for determining these sorts of things, of what a positive, negative, and neutral term. I will give you some general principles, but this is a little bit more of an art and a little bit less of a math or science. This isn't like the translations section of chapter 2 where I said in a black box on the page, memorize these patterns. We don't get that here. Instead, I'm going to give you some principles, and we're going to talk about them. And sort of trial and error and practice are going to be some of the best ways to discuss this. So here's something that a lot of you may not have known. Referring to a police officer as a cop has traditionally been taken as an insult by law enforcement. And in part, we need to know some of the history of why that's the case. The term cop is slang from 100, 150 years ago. The police officers would wear or possess this bright, big copper badge. And so it's referring to the police officers in this sort of slang sort of way, sort of reducing them to their badge. So one principle you should realize is anytime you are referring to humans in a way that dehumanizes them by comparing them to animals or to something inanimate like a copper badge, that's thought to be negative. Now, if you're like me, I've always thought of the word cop as just sort of a everyday way of referring to a police officer. I certainly never meant anything negative by it. But when you examine the idea, that probably isn't the most respectful way. It's not their title. It's not honorific. So a neutral way of describing people is to be minimally descriptive. Use their job title or job description. Police officer, law enforcement, that would be a neutral way. Now, here's something maybe you didn't know. There is an honorific way you're supposed to refer to the police if you're trying to be positive and compliment them. You're supposed to refer to them as the finest, something like Newport News' finest. Similarly, the firefighters are supposed to refer to as the bravest, Newport News' bravest. I'm not sure where these terms originated. That being said, if by chance you ever get pulled over, I strongly recommend you do not refer to the police officer as Newport News' finest. You will sound sarcastic, and the police officer will react badly to it. I won't tell you how I know that. All right, let's try another one. Talk about another one. Filthy rich. Well, this is a negative way of referring to somebody with a lot of money. How do we know that? Well, think about the word filthy. I mean, do we like things that are filthy? Generally not. It's not good to be filthy. One of the tools for examining, the proper categorization of these terms is to try to think of alternative ways to describe the same thing and try to put it on the continuum, on the spectrum of positive, neutral, or negative. So, what are some other ways of describing somebody who's really rich? Well, one way is sort of minimally descriptive by precisely how much money they have. So, one way to describe somebody who's filthy rich would be say, oh, he's a millionaire. Why? How do I know? Well, because he has $1 million. And it's just sort of minimally descriptive. It doesn't have implicit commentary. Once you throw the word filthy up there, it's got some implicit commentary, and it's not very nice implicit commentary. Or you can try to find some positive nuance. Oh, yeah, he's rich. He's an entrepreneur. He's a philanthropist. You can either try to focus on how they got their money or what they do with the money, and some positive aspect of that. So again, you have positive, neutral, and negative possible connotations. Let's see, what should I suggest here? I've got a bunch for us to practice, so let's practice. I will note that some people I've noticed do not take notes on the exercises properly. Here's the wrong way to go through these exercises together. Some of you, all you do is you cross out the wrong answer and you write down the right answer. That's not what you should be doing here. If you get the wrong answer, you should write down like a phrase or brief explanation on why the new answer is the right answer. In fact, even if you got it right, you might benefit from writing down why you got it right. Because again, why we go over these is to get to the principles. The goal isn't just to have the right answers and examples. You need to learn the principles. You need to learn how to get it right next time. All right, so heroic. Is that positive, neutral, or negative? Yeah, this one's pretty easy. Why is the word heroic positive? How do we know it's positive?
Because it has a cultural history of like having an idea of like positive, heroic, save the day.
Yeah, it has these sort of positive connotations. What else? Well, what test could I use for a word like this to determine whether or not it's positive, neutral, or negative? Well, here's one thing, and you should probably write this down. Would I like to be described this way? And if the answer is yes, it's probably positive. And if the answer is absolutely not, it's probably negative. And if the response is, well, kind of shrug, I don't know, then it might be neutral. I mean, again, that's not the only test, but that's a pretty good indicator. So would I like to be described as a hero? Hell yeah. What would we call a hero if we wanted to describe them negatively or neutrally? Reckless. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, reckless would be a more negative way of describing, presumably, what a hero did. John McClane, cop, trying to save Nagasaki Plaza from the terrorists. Is he a hero or is he reckless? Yeah, that's right. Good. What else? Anything? How else what might we describe a hero?
I put it in the right place at the right time.
Okay. Yeah, I guess. I mean,
I said like service oriented or anything.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I think service is still. I think that's sort of moderately positive, but that's definitely closer to neutral. What else? Bold, sure. I mean, again, I think bold still kind of positive. Yeah. So if you don't like a hero, maybe you call them a vigilante, or maybe you just call them sort of a violent, violent person who interferes. Again, depending on what exactly they're doing. All right, an extremist. Good. An extremist is bad. It's negative. Why? How do we know? What's so bad about being called an extremist? How do we know it's a negative term?
Because it means that, it generally means that this person believes in their views and nothing else, and they will act violently in order to express their views.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely says they're out of the mainstream. I mean, not all extremists are violent, but they're certainly out of the mainstream. They're on the fringe. They're different than the rest of us. What do you call an extremist if you want to be neutral or if you like them? An idealist. Yes.
Outspoken.
Outspoken. Yeah, that's definitely more neutral. Yeah, I think so. Is it always bad to be extreme? Not really. I mean, Mother Teresa, extremist, spends her whole life helping the poor. That horrible person. I mean, again, there are things that being an extremist is not bad. I'm sure if you think about it, there's certainly cases where going to extremes is appropriate. I would have gotten my doctorate, but I didn't want to be an extremist. Again, a strange use of the word, but it is kind of extreme to go through all the things you have to do to get a doctorate. Being extreme is not always bad, but the word has negative connotations. An elderly gentleman. All right, now we have a split here. Let's ask, why someone who thinks this is positive, why is this a positive rather than a neutral term? Okay. I'm not so sure about that, but maybe.
From a neutral standpoint, I really think that a more positive term would be senior.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's positive, the whole gentleman, right?
Yeah,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, that's good.
I feel like if you want to take the neutral thing, you could just call him an old man.
Good, that's right. Are all old men are all old men gentlemen? No. Gentleman has this higher class connotation, this virtuous connotation. Not all old people are gentlemen or gentlewomen. So they use the word gentleman. What do you call this person if you want to be neutral or negative? The surest way to be neutral is to be minimally descriptive. 70-year-old person, that's neutral. 72-year-old person, that's neutral. What about negative? Well, no insults for the aged. Grumpy old man. Actually, here, let me use the insult I always hear in the internet. Boomer. They don't think of it as an insult. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of insults associated with age historically. So yeah, I'm going to say anything involving a gentleman is positive. I'd also say senior citizen, positive, emphasizing somebody's citizenship. I mean, that's a way of saying something positive. Most people, I know we use it as referring to everybody, but there are other neutral to negative ways of referring to everybody. A bastard. Yeah, we all know that's negative. What's so bad about being a bastard? What else could we call them? Or rather, how do we know? How do we know that bastard is a negative term?
When there's it's sort of a like, I don't know how to place, but I would sort of put it as slang for illegitimate.
Yeah, it is slang for born out of wedlock. Why is that so bad? Well, what's the word bastard actually historically etymologically referred to?
Doesn't mean not have a father.
To a male dog. So to be born out of wedlock is like being born to a wild animal that's uncivilized. And that's why the whole born out of, an officially recognized relationship is bad. Also, anytime you're comparing humans to non-human things, that's a pretty big indicator that it's a bad thing. What do we call someone if we want to? What do we call this category if we want to use something neutral or positive?
I said adversarial, but I was kind of thinking about that's
I mean, you're right. There is sort of just a general negative use of this word, but I want to focus on the not, born out of wedlock. How do we describe somebody who's not born to two people who are married if we want to call them something neutral or positive?
I guess it's born out of wedlock.
Maybe. I'd say maybe child in a single parent family or something like that. That might be a little more neutral. If you want to be positive, you call them a love child. That's what the hippies call their kids. It's a way of saying all we need is love to make a family. We don't need your stupid piece of government paper. And all those couples broke up a long time ago, so maybe that didn't work out so well. Baloney. By the way, here we are not talking about lunch meat. We're talking about referring to what somebody says as baloney. Question? All right, we all know baloney is bad. Why is it bad for what you say to be baloney? You're doing all the heavy lifting here. Come on, get involved. Yes.
Because it's just saying that's just like out of place. It's saying like it's like so irrelevant. It's like baloney.
Okay. Okay, you're definitely suggesting they're lying. Okay, so let's get into the word itself here. Why is it called bologna and not like, we don't say roast beef or liverwurst? Why bologna?
process, it's baked, it's like unpersonal and possible.
So yeah, so what part of the animal does the bologna come from? We don't know. It's all the leftover scraps. That's where the bologna comes from. And so it's a kind of fake meat. So when you call what somebody says bologna, you're saying that's fake, like this, strange lunch meat that, people were more in touch with this 30 years ago, I think. What would we call bologna if we wanted to be neutral or positive about it? Yeah, you might just say, yeah, I don't think that's true, or I don't think that's right. That would be more neutral. What's that? Misguided? Yeah.
Incorrect.
Incorrect? Yeah, that sounds neutral. Is there a way to refer to this positively? I mean, that's kind of hard. How imaginative? Maybe something like that.
Good try, but
Good try. Hey, points for effort, right? I like that. A nice touch. A backward country. All right, we all know that's negative, or mostly know that's negative. What's so negative about being backwards? Why is that a negative term? Okay, against progress.
just generally condescending, again, that's the idea of progress. People, countries that have quote unquote progress,
Yeah, the idea is we have it right implicitly, and they're backwards. If we're actually just opposites, how do we know we're not the ones who are backwards and they're not the ones that have it right? Right? So what would we call it if it was neutral or positive? Yeah, different. Okay. What if we wanted to be positive? Traditional? Sure. Tribal? Or maybe just exotic. I like things that are exotic. I don't like things that are backwards. And again, and they could even describe the same trait. Authoritarian. Yeah, most of us know this is negative. Authoritarian is where you're the leader and you just kind of, hand down decisions. What would be a neutral or positive?
I actually kind of put it as neutral, and I thought, like, I had a negative, like, dictatorship, a little bit more negative than the first thing. I thought it was more in the middle, where you got, like, a dictatorship, being positive or negative, and, like, well organized, or, like, very structured, things with a positive.
Yeah, I'm going to say this is one of those cases where there's probably more than one term that's bad. So just because we could call somebody a tyrant, that doesn't mean make dictator okay. So tyrant, dictator, authoritarian is probably more neutral, less bad than those two. I'm still going to say that's more on the negative side of the thing. I mean, at least in a democracy, you don't want people calling you authoritarian. That's what we call people we don't like. I mean, I suppose if that's what their role is. Leadership? Positive. Yeah, okay, leadership. I mean, so if you like them, you say they're a strong leader. They, we need strong leadership in hard times. Anything else? Yeah, I probably won't ask you this one. This one's a little harder than some of the others. A do-gooder. All right, now this one we have a nice little split on. This one, whether or not the term is positive or negative actually depends on context. I mean, do we like people who do good? I hope so, right? But do we like do-gooders? Sometimes do-gooders is sort of a sarcastic comment, an ironic comment. Or it's the sort of thing where you can imagine a teacher saying, "Oh, little Johnny, aren't you the do-gooder?" And it's a compliment when the teacher says it. And then when the other kids on the playground say, "Oh, Johnny, you're just a do-gooder," then it has negative connotations. So again, it depends on context. Sometimes we associate terms like this with people who really aren't that good, but who think of themselves as good. So for example, perhaps you've heard of the term virtue signaling. That means you're not a very good person, but you like to just sort of kiss up to what you think is politically popular. I've heard a fancier version of that term. It's called moral grandstanding. Trying to draw attention to yourself by your fake indignancy. A hair splitter. Positive, neutral, or negative? Negative. Okay. Yes, it's negative. Now, hair splitter, of course, is one of the insults that gets thrown at philosophers because we're so preoccupied with the exact nuances of words and such. What do we call such people if we want to be neutral or positive? Detail-oriented, yeah, same thing. But that's the positive spin. Precise, yeah, that's certainly neutral to positive. So again, hair splitter, you could also call them a lawyer. All right, egghead, I'm going to stipulate that egghead is bad. Why? Because we're comparing somebody, reducing someone to the shape of their head, and comparing it to something non-human, an egg. We don't really need to discuss that beyond that. How about a bizarre idea? A bizarre idea. Yeah, bizarre is negative. What do you call a bizarre idea if you want to be neutral to positive? Yeah, I'm gonna say out of touch is still negative because we want to be in touch, not out of touch. Yeah, unique would be unique could be good, could be bad, so that's neutral-ish. Out of the box, yeah.
Just simply an idea.
Yeah, that's an idea. Interesting. Here's my neutral one. That's an interesting idea. Interesting because it's really bad or really good. I haven't told you. A creative idea, that would be positive. A kid. Now here's one. Gensler would probably insist this is a negative term. Anyone know what the history of the word kid is? Where does this word come from?
I'd like to say goats.
Yeah, it's a domesticated animal term. It refers to annoying little goats. So obviously comparing human children to little goats, this is dehumanizing and negative. Now, this again is one I'm not going to ask you because this word obviously has just entered mainstream use. Most of us, when we refer to kids, we don't mean it negatively. There's some context where it has a negative, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, they're just a kid. There are contexts that can have a negative slant, but it's one of those terms. It might just be neutralish. Hey, when do you want to have kids someday? That's not negative. Booze. Booze as a way of referring to alcohol in general. Yeah, booze is a negative way to refer to alcohol. What would be a neutral to positive way to refer to alcohol?
Just alcohol.
Yeah, alcohol would be neutral. What's positive? How might we try to call it more positive?
Like a cold one.
Cold one. Yeah, hey, give me a cold one. That sounds. The fact that I want it enthusiastically makes it a little more positive. The fact that it's cold, I suppose, is neutral-ish. What else? What are some other ways to refer to alcohol? A cocktail sounds a little more upper class, right? That sounds fancy. Give me a craft beer. That's fancy. What's that? An adult beverage, emphasizing that this means I'm mature that I can have the adult beverage. And neutral, I guess you just refer to most things by its name. Beer. But yeah, booze, that's the old sort of judgmental way of, I'm afraid you're going to buy booze with this money. Don't waste our money on booze. A gay, yeah, this is reducing someone to their sexuality is kind of a negative way of referring to them. We probably shouldn't do that. Abnormal. Yeah, this one's a little tricky. I mean, I would say, I accept I have an answer for this one. Um, I would say by use of the word, to call someone abnormal is negative. Because, we're sort of defining them in terms of they're not like the rest of us. That being said, it's a very mainstream word, so much so that we have courses called abnormal psych. And so it's mainstream enough that it's not meant to be insulting. Bureaucracy. Yeah, I'm going to say that this generally is a negative term. When you call something bureaucracy, you mean there's like all sorts of extra layers of unnecessary administration and paperwork. It's like dealing with the DMV. I hate it. Everyone hates the DMV, right? What do you call bureaucracy if you want to be neutral or if you like it?
Efficient government.
Yeah, efficient government or leadership or administration. Administration is probably neutral. Calling something efficient is probably complimentary. Abandoning me. Yeah, abandoning people is negative. What do you call this if you want to be neutral or positive? We're going our own way. There you go. Good. What else? That's positive. Leaving? Yeah, that's neutral. I mean, that's what you're going to do. Babbling. Yeah, babbling's just negative. We don't need to analyze that. Unless you're talking about a brook, babbling is negative. Yeah, brazen's negative too. Brazen is when you refer to somebody who is overly forward in their sexual interests. This is not meant to refer to like something that's bronze. An old broad. Again, this is referring to a woman as a broad is negative. You're reducing them. I believe that refers to the size of their hips. That's not good. Don't do that. In fact, you can probably get a Title IX accusation if you go around using terms like that. Some of these terms, if you look at them closely, again, I think Gensler is an older guy at this point, and some of these terms need to be updated because I don't hear people using these terms anymore. Old money bags. Now, again, this is negative, despite the fact that I think we all like money. Referring to someone as old money bags, that just is, again, it's reducing a human being to the size of their wallet. And, also adding old. Generally, in our culture is a youth-oriented culture. Generally, calling things old is not a compliment. Here's one, a busybody. Yeah, a busybody refers to somebody, despite the fact that our culture approves of people who work hard, a busybody refers to like a gossip, somebody who is overly interested in everybody else's business. If you watched old like 60s sitcoms, the busybody was like the neighbor who's always like trying to peek over the hedges to see what's going on, usually trying to see if the neighbor has a witch or a genie or something like that. A bribe. And this one's actually important. Yeah, bribes are negative. What do you call it if it's going to be neutral or positive?
Donation?
A contribution, a donation, yeah.
That's a deal sweetener.
A deal sweetener. Yeah, okay.
Payment.
Payment, a gift. Now, one thing, a lot of this is culturally, deals with cultural context. I mean, there are some places where bribes are expected and sort of normalish. There are places where if you are pulled over, you are expected to bribe the police officer. Make sure you know whether or not you're in one of those places. If you're not in one of those places and you attempt it, you could get into a lot of trouble. On the other hand, if you're in one of the places where it's expected and you don't, you can also get into trouble. Old-fashioned. Yeah, I mean, this one depends on context. Generally, our culture doesn't like older things. On the other hand, if you're going to Cracker Barrel, it's old-fashioned dining, and we kind of like it. Or if we're buying Pepperidge Farm or something like that. I don't know. We've got 2 or 3 minutes left. Are there any others we need to cover? Any others that anybody is just dying to talk about? Let's call that a wrap. We'll see you on Friday. We'll go over the test on Friday. We'll go over the next section, do the homework. Don't get left behind. Be careful out there. There's plenty of COVID running around campus.